Keanu Reeves, dressed casually in a hoodie and beanie, stood at the airport check-in counter with his passport in hand, completely unaware of the chaos about to unfold. When a simple paperwork error escalated, it looked like he might miss his flight. But just when the situation seemed out of control, 10 black SUVs pulled up, and the real story began to unravel. What happened next stunned everyone, especially the staff who had no idea just who they were dealing with. Stick around to hear the full story, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, we have another even more exciting and mysterious tale that you won't want to miss. It was a cold morning at a bustling international airport, where travelers rushed to catch flights and airport staff moved quickly through the crowds, performing their usual duties. The hum of the terminal was punctuated by announcements and the occasional distant roar of an airplane overhead. But nothing could have prepared the staff for the scene unfolding just beyond the security checkpoint. Keanu Reeves, dressed casually in a gray hoodie, black jeans, and his signature beanie, stood in front of the check-in counter, holding his passport. His face was calm, his eyes quiet, as he smiled gently at the young staff member behind the counter. He wasn't looking for attention, he never did. But his face was unmistakable, even when cloaked in the simplicity of a traveler. The staff member, Sarah, looked up at him and froze. A flicker of recognition passed through her expression, but it was quickly replaced by uncertainty. She'd seen celebrities before, but Keanu Reeves, one of the most beloved actors in the world, was different. This moment was surreal. She couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement, but at the same time, there was that nagging feeling in the back of her mind. What if I mess up? Her hands shook slightly as she looked at his passport, then back at the man before her. Her coworker, Sam, leaned in, also recognizing Keanu, and whispered, "Is that? No way, right?" But Sarah was focused on the task at hand. She cleared her throat, trying to regain composure, and scanned his passport. There was a slight problem with his visa. The computer screen flashed a warning, and she glanced up at him with a strained smile. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves, but it seems there's an issue with your paperwork. You won't be able to board the flight today." Keanu's smile faltered just a bit, but he remained patient, as always. "I'm sure there's some kind of mistake," he said softly. His calm tone, his graciousness, only seemed to heighten Sarah's anxiety. She looked back at the screen. The situation didn't seem to resolve itself. "I'm afraid we can't allow you to enter without the proper documents," she said, voice tinged with nerves. A bead of sweat formed on Sarah's forehead as she glanced over at Sam for reassurance, but he just looked back at her with wide eyes. They both knew the stakes. Keanu Reeves wasn't just any celebrity. He was a global icon, known for his kindness, humility, and warmth. To be caught in a situation like this felt almost unreal. And then it happened. The sound of a low rumble reverberated through the terminal as 10 black SUVs came screeching to a halt just outside the doors. Their tinted windows reflected the pale morning sunlight as the engine growled to a stop, and a small convoy of suited men spilled out of the vehicles, their sharp eyes scanning the crowd with military precision. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The air seemed to freeze as the SUV's drivers quickly made their way toward the terminal. People stopped in their tracks, murmuring under their breath, wondering what was going on. Who were these people? What was happening? One of the suited men approached the counter, his voice calm but commanding. "Where is Mr. Reeves?" he asked, his eyes scanning the area. Sarah, now utterly panicked, gestured shakily to Keanu, who had remained eerily calm through it all. "He's right here, but there's a problem with his paperwork," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. The suited man nodded and turned to Keanu, his demeanor shifting from cold professionalism to one of quiet reverence. "Mr. Reeves, we apologize for the confusion. We've been notified about the situation." He glanced at Sarah. "Please allow us to take care of it." Before Sarah could protest, one of the other suited men stepped forward and spoke into an earpiece, confirming that all was in order. Within moments, the issue was resolved. Keanu's entry was authorized, the paperwork cleared, and the entire situation shifted from chaos to calm as if it had never happened. The suited men nodded respectfully to Keanu. "Mr. Reeves, we're terribly sorry for this inconvenience," one of them said. Keanu smiled warmly, his eyes carrying the same kindness that had made him a beloved figure for decades. "It's all right," he said softly. "Mistakes happen. I understand." But the impact of the moment lingered. The tension that had built up around the counter slowly melted away, and Sarah and Sam exchanged wide-eyed glances. They had just witnessed something rare, the unshakable kindness and composure of someone who could have easily reacted differently, but instead chose to be patient and understanding. As Keanu made his way toward the departure gate, escorted by the suited men, the hush of the terminal seemed to follow him. Everyone watched, some in awe, others in disbelief. The SUVs, once intimidating, now seemed like just another part of the background to a moment that had left its mark on everyone who had witnessed it. Keanu's calm had transformed the entire situation, turning it from potential disaster into a moment of grace. He didn't raise his voice, didn't demand special treatment. He didn't need to. His quiet confidence, his kindness, spoke volumes more than any high-powered entourage ever could. Sarah and Sam stood frozen for a moment before they spoke in hushed tones. "Did that just happen?" Sam whispered. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her eyes wide. "But I think we just learned something important." Later that day, when the airport staff shared their story, it wasn't about the mistake or the SUVs. It was about Keanu's grace under pressure, the way he never lost his composure, the way he treated everyone, staff, security, even those who had initially turned him away, with the same quiet respect. The story spread, of course, but not as a tale of celebrity entitlement. Instead, it became a story of true humility. It was a reminder that kindness wasn't just for the cameras or for those who were watching. It was something you could carry with you, quietly and without fanfare, even when the world was chaotic and the stakes were high. And when the staff reflected on the encounter, they couldn't help but think that, perhaps, the true lesson wasn't about paperwork, or even about Keanu himself. It was about how, in moments of uncertainty, we all have a choice: to react with patience, understanding, and kindness. To treat others with respect, no matter the circumstances. Keanu Reeves had shown them how to do just that. And they would carry that lesson with them forever. The days following Keanu's visit to the airport felt surreal to Sarah and Sam, like they had been part of some kind of quiet miracle. They couldn't stop talking about the encounter, how everything had unfolded, how calm Keanu had remained, how his mere presence seemed to change the entire atmosphere of the terminal. It wasn't just the celebrity aspect of it that had left them in awe. It was his humanity, his ability to remain grounded despite everything around him, his genuine kindness. In a world that often felt chaotic and impersonal, Keanu had reminded them that true strength wasn't in power or status. It was in how you treated others when nobody was watching. Sarah kept replaying his soft words in her mind. "Mistakes happen. I understand." Those simple words had been so much more than just an excuse. It was his acceptance, his ability to let things go without anger, without frustration. He had been wrong, but instead of lashing out, he chose patience, understanding, and grace. The more Sarah thought about it, the more she realized how rare that kind of composure was. In her own life, she often found herself reacting out of frustration, or worse, out of impatience. But after seeing how Keanu handled the situation, she started to wonder, what if she could do the same? What if she could approach challenges with the same calm strength? That night, she stayed up late, reflecting on everything she had witnessed. She realized that the lesson Keanu had unknowingly taught her wasn't just about remaining calm in the face of adversity. It was about remembering that every person has a story, a reason for why they act the way they do. She thought about how Keanu hadn't judged the staff, hadn't gotten upset at the misunderstanding. He had simply let it go. The next day, when Sarah was faced with a minor problem at work, another mistake on her shift, another minor inconvenience, she took a deep breath and found herself pausing. Instead of rushing to fix it or getting upset, she allowed herself a moment of clarity. Mistakes happen, she thought. It's okay. And for the first time, she didn't panic. She didn't let the little mistake ruin her day. She simply dealt with it, calmly, quietly, without drama. It felt good. In fact, it felt empowering. Meanwhile, Sam, who had also been deeply impacted by Keanu's kindness, found himself acting differently too. On his way home from work, he spotted a homeless man sitting on a bench, his hands shaking as he tried to wrap himself in a tattered coat against the evening chill. Normally, Sam would have walked right past him, lost in his own thoughts, too busy to spare a second glance. But today was different. Sam stopped, took a moment, and walked over to the man. "Hey," he said softly. "Do you need something warm? Maybe a cup of coffee?" The man looked up at him, surprised, and then nodded slowly, the corners of his eyes softening. Sam could see the weight of the world in his face, an exhaustion that didn't come from a bad day, but from a lifetime of hardship. Sam didn't say anything more, he just walked with the man to the nearby coffee shop and bought him a hot drink. As they sat there together, Sam listened. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was enough. The man shared stories, some hopeful, some heartbreaking, but Sam was there, really there, listening. Sam couldn't help but think of Keanu. He had seen the actor in the airport, a man who had so much yet acted with such humility. He had treated Sarah, the other staff members, even the security guards with the same respect he had shown everyone else. In that quiet, unassuming way of his, he had taught Sam that it didn't matter who you were or how much you had, it was about what you gave to others. And that lesson stayed with him. Weeks passed, and Sarah, Sam, and the rest of the airport staff began to notice subtle changes in their own behavior. They found themselves giving people more patience, more kindness. Small acts, like offering a smile to a tired traveler or helping someone with their luggage, became more frequent. And every time they did, they couldn't help but think of that one moment with Keanu, when he had simply chosen kindness, without question, without hesitation. One day, Sarah received a letter from a family who had been traveling through the airport shortly after the incident with Keanu. They had written to thank the staff for the way they had treated them with such warmth and respect. The letter mentioned how, despite the stressful travel, the staff had gone out of their way to make sure they were comfortable, to make sure they didn't feel rushed or overwhelmed. The family noted that, especially after seeing the way Keanu had been treated with dignity, they felt a sense of peace in an otherwise stressful day. It was a small note, a small gesture, but to Sarah, it meant the world. She realized then that kindness didn't have to be a grand event. It didn't have to make headlines or be shouted from the rooftops. It could be as simple as holding the door for someone or offering a quiet word of encouragement when it was needed most. And so, life continued on. Keanu, in his quiet way, had unknowingly sparked something in them all. His gentle grace had set off a ripple effect that would forever change the way Sarah, Sam, and the entire airport staff moved through the world. As for Keanu, he never knew the impact he'd had. He went on with his life, doing the work he loved, always carrying himself with the same unshakable kindness. But for those who had crossed paths with him in that fleeting moment, his influence would stay with them forever. Because sometimes, the greatest moments of transformation don't come with a grand gesture. They come in the quiet moments, when a person chooses to be kind, to be patient, and to show others the kind of humanity that changes the world in the most profound way. And so, they moved forward, never forgetting the lesson of that cold morning, when one man's quiet strength changed everything. The months that followed Keanu's brief visit to the airport seemed to ripple outward, touching more lives than Sarah or Sam had ever imagined. The small act of kindness, the grace under pressure, had planted a seed in the hearts of the staff, and slowly, that seed had grown into something beautiful. It wasn't loud or attention-grabbing. It didn't make headlines or go viral. It was simply a quiet transformation that had taken root. Sarah found herself reflecting often on the change that had come over her. She'd always thought of herself as kind, but now there was a depth to it, a patience she hadn't known before. In the midst of a busy, sometimes chaotic airport terminal, she found herself taking a moment to breathe, to center herself, and to meet each passenger, each person, with the kind of empathy that Keanu had shown her in that brief moment. It was as if the way he had treated everyone, from the security guards to the staff, had redefined what it meant to truly see someone, to really understand them. One afternoon, Sarah found herself at the front desk when a young woman approached her. The woman was clearly distressed, her hands shaking as she clutched a small suitcase. I missed my flight," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do. My family's waiting for me." Sarah looked at her, really looked at her, and something deep inside her shifted. She didn't see a problem to be fixed, a task to complete. She saw a person, a mother, a daughter, someone whose world had just been turned upside down. And without thinking twice, she gently placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. "It's okay," she said, her voice calm and soothing, the way Keanu's had been. "We'll figure this out. You're not alone. You're going to get there, I promise." It wasn't about finding a quick solution or fixing everything in that moment. It was about making the woman feel seen, heard, and cared for. And that was enough. Later, Sarah thought about how she had reacted in the past, how, in stressful situations, she had sometimes rushed to fix things, to make them better, without taking the time to be with the person. But now, she understood that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is just be there. It was something Keanu had taught her without ever intending to. Meanwhile, Sam had also found himself forever changed by the encounter. He had always been someone who prided himself on being tough, on keeping a wall around his heart. But Keanu's quiet humility had cracked that wall wide open. He'd started volunteering at a local shelter, helping people who were going through hard times, and with each moment spent there, Sam learned that strength wasn't about being hard or impenetrable. It was about being open, being vulnerable, and offering your hand when someone needed it most. One day, Sam was at the shelter when a woman came in with her child. She was new to the area, having recently fled an abusive relationship. She sat down with her son, her eyes filled with a deep sadness that Sam had come to recognize over time. She seemed lost, uncertain of where to start or what to do next. Sam sat down beside her. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently, his voice soft but full of understanding. The woman looked at him with surprise, as if no one had ever asked her that question before. She took a deep breath before replying. I'm scared. I don't know how I'm going to make it." Sam nodded, his heart aching for her. He had no answers, no quick fixes. But just like Keanu had done for him, he listened. He didn't rush to offer solutions or advice. He simply sat with her, letting her talk, letting her know she wasn't alone. The change in Sam was subtle but profound. He started reaching out more to people in need, not because he wanted to appear generous, but because he truly understood, for the first time, how much someone's simple presence could mean. How kindness wasn't just about doing nice things, it was about being a steady hand, a safe space for someone else to rest, even if only for a little while. And it wasn't just Sarah and Sam. More and more of the airport staff began to shift in small ways. There was a noticeable difference in the way they interacted with travelers and with one another. There was a gentleness now, an unspoken understanding that everyone, no matter where they were from or what they were going through, deserved to be treated with respect. Then, one day, a letter arrived at the airport's staff office. The letter was from an elderly woman who had traveled through the airport several months earlier. She recounted her experience at the check-in counter, where she had been struggling with her luggage and feeling overwhelmed by the bustling crowds. She had been greeted by a young woman, who helped her without hesitation, making her feel safe, understood, and cared for. The elderly woman wrote that she hadn't felt such warmth in years, and it had made all the difference in her journey. She had arrived at her destination feeling lighter, more hopeful. As Sarah read the letter aloud to the staff, a quiet wave of emotion washed over the group. They hadn't realized the impact they were having, how their simple acts of kindness were creating ripples far beyond the airport walls. They weren't just serving travelers, they were leaving a mark on their hearts, reminding them that they were seen, valued, and respected. It was in that moment that Sarah realized something she hadn't fully grasped before. Kindness, no matter how small, was its own kind of legacy. It didn't require fame or recognition, it just needed to be given freely, without expectation. And so, life continued at the airport, and Sarah and Sam, along with the rest of the staff, moved forward with a newfound sense of purpose. They didn't need the spotlight or accolades. They simply wanted to make the world a little bit better, one small interaction at a time. As for Keanu, he would never know the full extent of the change he had set in motion. But that was part of the magic. His quiet strength had rippled out into the world, not through grand gestures or flashy headlines, but through simple, everyday acts of humanity. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Because sometimes, the most profound changes happen not with loud proclamations, but with the gentle, steady power of kindness. If this story touched your heart, we've got many more that will do the same. Click the screen to discover more tales of hope, compassion, and resilience that will inspire you.